My company that I was at was struggling, literally missing payments, late on bonuses, and seeing that there were, changes had already started happening, and I just need to get to a different place. My name is Brandon Harris, and I've been working with mentoring for the last 5 months. And so from that first call, everything seemed, I don't want to say too good to be true. The people who I expect would be really good at this, like you wouldn't hear their names a lot, right? Like it's kind of like an executive recruiter if you get one from a company, like you don't know all their names because that's not that's not how they do it. So in a similar way, the more so the opportunity cost of not doing it, if it shaves a few months off of my process, that would be insanely valuable. My only question was whether it would necessarily work for me. And where I came to was
Following is a conversation with our client Brandon Harris. We landed him a VP of product role at a company called Pantheon. He had come to us because he was expecting a layoff from the earlier company that he was working with, and his wife at the time had already been laid off. Now, with 5 kids, he was in a real scoop. So, on his own, he had found that the job market was not working in his favor, and he wanted professional help that can help him land the right role ASAP. We landed him VP level offer in 4 months, along with interviews at 21 other companies. We completely managed his job search with our done for you service. So all he had to do was show up to the interviews prepared. Now, here's his testimony.
What your scenario was earlier, like what motivated you to go out in the market again to look out for a role, and what's your backstory with that?
my company that I was at was struggling, literally missing payments, late on bonuses, and seeing that there were, changes had already started happening, and I just need to get to a different place. And I had been looking on my own for a while and just wasn't seeing the traction that I expected. And everything was changing so quickly. And I felt like I didn't have time to hope and praying for things to take long. So I was looking for an opportunity to accelerate it, the process, getting to the next role.
Yes, you did mention that you almost applied to over 60 applications, and like none of them like got converted into further than this initial recruiter screening.
Mhm.
So how was that process in itself, like when you were yourself into the market and you were looking at roles and like doing everything on your own?
I think it was difficult for a lot of reasons. Like doing it on my own, I'm using my best case scenario on how to approach a job hunt that I hadn't done in a while. And I only know from my experiences doing it or me hiring people. And so not necessarily knowing what the market looked like in aggregate from looking for the type of role that I was looking for. And then I think also difficult and probably even more so because of time, right? Like amount of time and the approach to do it, like knowing now what we eventually got through to working with Wolf, getting to that approach from not having knowledge of doing it that way, and also from having time to invest in it. Like initially, when I first started, I was doing something else at the same time. Like I just didn't have time and space. It was not untenable, but difficult. It would have been very, very difficult to do.
And how did you like land up at the first sales calls with us? Like, how did you find Wolf Mentoring?
I actually don't remember how I found it. It might have been an ad of someone saying, "Hey, talk to us." And so from that first call, everything seemed, I don't want to say too good to be true, but more so like all the boxes were checked. Everything made sense. My only questions were, I haven't heard all that much about Wolf or anyone. Like, I don't know, how do you pick someone? Like the people who I expect would be really good at this are like you wouldn't hear their names a lot, right? Like it's kind of like an executive recruiter if you get one from a company, like you don't know all their names because that's not that's not how they do it. So in a similar way, everything in the conversations made sense. You all being able to show what the process looked like and things that were in process and the dashboards and how things are tracked was incredibly helpful. And so like from that first conversation, my only two questions were how we financially make this work and what is my realistic risk that Wolf is not real? Right? Like those were my two questions.
What made you believe in the end, like to work with us, even after having those skepticism in the starting?
That whenever I asked the question, there was an answer and approach, and it was also documented, right? Like I could see the live Asana boards and examples. And so, like, then my only question was whether it would necessarily work for me. And where I came to was the more so the opportunity cost of not doing it. If it shaves a few months off of my process, that would be insanely valuable. I won't know. Like, there's no way of me, the things that I felt like were a risk, I would have no idea about how to mitigate them or if they were real until we started. So it was like, hey, either start and find out or miss out.
Right. And you were also worried about the timeline as well. Like
Yes.
if you,
Timeline is very real.
but here we are in 5 months, you have a role with you. Exactly what was spoken about when you were talking to Karan. A good thing. And I'm really, really happy with that as well.
Yes.
After that, while you were working with us, what would you say about how we positioned you in the market than you would have yourself or you have experienced other people doing it in the traditional recruiting business?
The positioning work that you did, I think, had a lot to do with providing insight on how to position, to focus on for each particular role. And then I would say the most valuable thing was actually the reach outs, like the emails to people. Like once things got going, there was a lot of activity that seemed to come from that. And there was one person I spoke to who literally said I was one in a million in terms of having just sent him a message. He was a executive vice president at 3M. And we had a conversation. He's like, yeah, kind of one in a million in terms of like reaching out and trying to have the conversation. And so I think the positioning was more about curating the thing that should be shared out of the lots of things. Identifying one of the things you did with your resume service is identify what do we think are the key elements for the roles that are out there that need to be highlighted in the resume. And then for each role, being specific in the communication of like, here's based on the resume why we think he fits.
If you had to put it out, like how was it working with us, with the processes, with the weekly connects and everything, as in the entire 5 month process? If you had to comment on that, how was it working with us?
It was good, very good. Let me be specific. Will do it again in a heartbeat. Two things that I think made it extra helpful, even from other experiences I've heard about and stuff, because I did do more research. One is that the team consistently did stuff, right? Like every day there are new roles. They're going out and finding out, and it's not one person doing it all. So people having some sort of specialty in that particular part of the process, I think was nice because it provided insight and kind of calmed some of my nerves. And so that was great in working. So that consistency, like every day there was activity happening, even if I'm not, even with me not driving it. And I think the second part was that, which is similar, but very different in that every time y'all said you would do something, every time you said you would, you did. Right. And I'm not talking about like outcomes. The outcomes are completely unknown in the process, right? Like everyone, you have an estimation of what you think it's going to take. I have a hope of what I think it's going to take. Right. And so like without having positive things on what the outcomes are going to look like, the pattern of this is going to happen, then it happening. We're going to do this and then you do it actually is the thing that builds confidence and trust and calms nerves in the process. And so like, aside from consistency, which is like, it happens over and over and over, if there are any small deviations, like all of that stuff was helpful.
Okay, now let's talk about the most important thing of this call, your new role at Pantheon. So what do you have to say about that role? What is the role about? How do you feel about it? And what are your future plans with it?
The actual role that I accepted is the vice president of product for Pantheon. Pantheon has 300,000 websites. Like if you have a WordPress or a Drupal site, having the site is one piece, but then you have to actually put it on the web. And then there are web ops things that have to happen. So Pantheon provides that. And they're a rather large player in that space, like really large, 300,000 websites, including Princeton. Like there's countries that have their site on it large. Like there was just a conversation that I was privy to with a major aircraft builder, right? So like great clients. They had a new CEO who came on a year ago. And so they are looking to scale and grow and continue the transformation. And my role is pivotal because one of the things they did is they took engineering, design, and product and have them all start reporting to one individual who's my boss, the SVP. And then so within that, there's a VP of product, a VP of engineering. There's someone in charge of product ops. Design is within it. I am excited, or I'm looking forward to, in our conversations, the organization is shifting in the product that it's offering for the same customers, but like really accelerating that, really taking advantage of what's plausible with AI and accelerating towards a future where like, what does the web look like moving forward? And I get to lead what that looks like within the team, which is cool. I have reports on product side. I have reports on research, reports on design. Like literally a week and a half in, we're all going to Georgia to have like a leadership summit for product. But like it's really cool.
I'm really happy for you, and Pantheon is definitely having its time. Thanks for letting me know about the role as well. After that, what advice would you give to anyone that's out there in a similar situation that you were before you joined us and is struggling with how to find a perfect role for them or how to strategize their switching or any of those scenarios?
Have a system and work the system. I would also advise them to something I think I started doing later, which was not create content, but like use your LinkedIn to provide additional insight that you don't get to share in your interviews, right? Like there's always lots of questions, very short amount of time. So one of the things I found helpful and I heard was helpful was I started posting things on, I did like this amplified model thing, started sharing and becoming slightly more active, and not for the purposes of actually building a brand in this case, so that when someone who was interviewing me went to my LinkedIn, they had something they could read to get a better idea of who I was outside of my resume. I would advise people to start doing that. And then something that you told me that I started doing that I think probably actually this is the most important. I started preparing for all the interviews. It's really hard when there are a lot of conversations, and I've interviewed literally thousands of people. I've been interviewed many times, but using AI, like building a Claude project for everything and then taking the transcripts from Granola and dropping them in the Claude so I can query back on it. And like for every interview, spending time like, okay, what's this person probably going to be looking for? Here are interesting things. And even in making a decision and looking at opportunities, it was one of the things that I did. Like, okay, what's the most awesome this job could be, right? And like, what's the most benign, and doing that brainstorming so you have an idea. And now in my ramp up, literally this week, I had a conversation with my new boss, and we talked about things coming and stuff. But in prep for that, I had all the interviews to use as context for that conversation. So in that conversation, I referred back to something that when my CEO interview that he told me about what he expected in the role. And that became like 15 minutes of my conversation with my new boss that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't been taking transcript for that call. And so like I would say every interview you have to treat it matters. Like dig into it because you'll learn like being genuinely invested in the company and what they need and what they're looking for, and not the getting a job piece. Three things. If you use LinkedIn content to subsidize what someone's going to learn for you in an interview, prep for your interviews and take transcripts to record them, put in Claude Project. And then the third thing is having genuine interest in the company and the role and not just getting a job. Learn all that you can.
Well, that is damn impressive, Brandon. The 3 pointers that you mentioned, very helpful coming from a person like you. Thank you for that. In the end, have a great day, Brandon. It was great speaking with you, and yeah, have a blast.
You too,
Bye.
man. Bye.